Hello, welcome to La Excellence. In our ReCAP program, we are revising monthly current affairs. In this session, let us understand part 3 of November 2020. PDF of this particular video is available in the description. If you want to enroll for the test series based on the 1-year revision of current affairs, you can do so by clicking on the link mentioned in the description. Let us start with Indian society and social issues. First issue is National Education Policy. This is the new education policy. This was announced by Ministry of HRD. Now we are calling it as Ministry of Education. This policy is aimed at transforming Indian education to suit to the needs of 21st century. You might have read about it many times. Just try to recollect the important points. Developing unique capabilities among the children, developing the foundational literacy, flexibility to the learners, reducing the differences between arts and sciences, promoting multidisciplinary education, promotion of conceptual understanding, encouraging logical decision making and innovation. Likewise, we have important points mentioned over here. Please go through them once. So these are some of the important points with regard to National Education Policy. Next issue is 25th year of Beijing Platform for Women. Beijing Declaration was signed in the year 1995 during the 4th World Conference for Women. UN Women is the nodal agency to implement this particular one. Under this particular agenda, there are 12 critical areas such as promotion of women health, women in power, decision making, protection of girl child, women and environment. These are some of the important areas out of 12 critical areas which are identified under Beijing Platform for Women. It's been 25 years since this particular Beijing Platform for Women was announced at 4th World Conference on Women. In our prelims examination, they might ask this name, Beijing Platform, related to what? Something like that. And 12 critical areas, women empowerment, women development, gender promotion of gender equality. These are the themes of Beijing Platform for Women. Next issue is Bonda tribe and migration. Tribes and tribal related issues is part of our Indian society. They are migrating due to the economic distress. That is why it was in news. Now, who are these Bondas? Bondas are PVTGs, particularly vulnerable tribal groups. There are overall 75 PVTGs in India. Out of them, 13 PVTG groups. Most number of them live in Odisha. These Bonda tribes are Afro-Asiatic tribes. It is believed that these are the tribes that have migrated from Africa to India in the first case. These are primarily forest dwellers. Matriarchal society. They follow matriarchal preference and matriarchal society. They have unique dressing style. See these kind of necklaces they wear. And they speak Remo language, which is part of Munda languages. Mundari group of languages. Remo language is part of Mundari language of groups. Next issue is National Portal for Transgender Persons. In the year 2019, Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act was passed. According to that, transgender persons will be given the identification ID certificates. For that, they need not go to any office and obtain it. They can just apply it through this particular portal. Without any physical interference, they can get the ID cards, identification cards. This portal was launched by Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Name of this portal is National Portal for Transgender Persons. Along with this, Ministry of Social Justice also introduced Garima Grihe. This provides shelter home for the shelterless transgenders with the basic amenities such as food, medical care, etc. It also provides for capacity building. Important, this can be a question. Next issue is Interstate Migrant Policy Index. Last year, because of the lockdowns, many of the migrants from almost all the states, across all the states, they have faced crisis. In this context, Interstate Migrant Policy Index was released by India Migration Now and IMPX. They rank the countries based on the migrant integration policies such as protection of child rights, education, health, sanitation, housing, etc. of the migrants. More than 1/3 of Indian population is internal migrant, and 75% of out of them are youth. So in this context, this particular index and report was published. This report has mentioned that Kerala, Goa, and Rajasthan, these three states, are top three states with migrant friendly policies. Kerala provides targeted schemes, social security and labor protection and welfare schemes to migrant workers. Rajasthan does not have restrictions based on domicile certificate. Goa has favorable policies like information to migrants in their native language, contractors, they also bear the healthcare costs, etc. And states, many of the states, they have discriminatory policies against the migrants. This has to be addressed because migrants, they contribute to the economic development, cultural development of the area. That is why. That is the significance of this index. This index calculates who has favorable migrant policies, who don't have. Kerala, Goa, and Rajasthan, these are the top states with migrant friendly policies. Next issue is Scotland has become the first country in the world to make the period products free for all. In this context, we have to understand this topic known as period poverty. Period poverty means when the incomes are low, they can't afford or access the suitable period products. That is why, to make sure that period products are available to everyone, Scotland has taken this measure, and its parliament has unanimously approved the bill, and now it has become the first country to supply the sanitary products free of cost. This has many positive impacts on women's health. Next, let us understand economy related current affairs. First issue is viability gap funding. Viability gap is when a venture is there, and if the venture is not economically viable, then government or anyone can support through funding. That funding is known as viability gap funding. Recently, in November 2020, this was in news because Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, it has approved extension of viability gap funding scheme under PPP till 2024 and 25 with 8,000 crore rupees. PPPs, they involve in collaboration between government agency and private sector. If the revenue shortages are there for the private sector, viability gap funding, this is one-time fund from the government. Viability gap funding would be provided. Earlier, it was provided only for economic infrastructure. Now it is available for social infrastructure too. Schools, educational institutions, hospitals, these are all known as social infrastructure. So even in the social infrastructure, this is available now. Next issue is insider trading issue and Sahara case. Insider trading issues are dealt by SEBI, Securities Exchange Board of India. So what do we mean by insider trading? Let's say while buying or selling company shares, if a person has the access to unpublished price sensitive information, and if that is used to manipulate or buy or sell the shares of the company, that is known as insider trading. That means prior to giving the information in the market, by the virtue of having the insider knowledge or insider information, that person is either selling or buying the stocks of the company. So that practice is known as insider trading, that is banned in India by SEBI. But if that is done, if SEBI identifies and confirms it, appropriate action will be taken up. Next issue is abuse of dominant position. Dominant position means in the market, if the company has dominating share, then if it abuses that particular power and share, that condition is known as abuse of dominant position. It is one of the conditions under Competition Act 2002. Under this particular act, abuse of dominant position can attracts the antitrust law, that is Competition Act. CCI, Competition Commission of India, takes action on such activities. Abuse of dominance means misuse of dominant position of a company. Let's say Google, it is a dominant firm. So it has Android software. GPay app is pre-installed in all Android apps, all Android-based smartphones. That means people tend to use GPay app more than other competitive apps, no? That reduces the competition in the market. So that means it is an anti-competitive measure. Under Competition Act, such measures would be prohibited, and such in case of such measures, Competition Commission of India will take the measures. That why? Because this makes other companies at a disadvantageous position, puts them at disadvantageous position. That is why abuse of dominant position is one of the grounds for attracting the Competition Act. Next issue is top 2 total scheme. Top scheme is tomatoes, onions and potatoes is for price stabilization. Price stabilization of these fruits and vegetables, for these things government has proposed top scheme. Now last year government has revised it and it has proposed total scheme. All important fruits and vegetables would be covered for 6 months for price stabilization. Why? These are perishable. Fruits and vegetables are perishable, and due to COVID lockdown and other issues, these are facing distress sale. In this context, to provide the price stability, total scheme was introduced under Ministry of Food Processing Industry. This is to reduce the post-harvest losses also. Total and top schemes, these are related to price stability under Operation Greens. Next issue is PLI scheme, Cabinet's approval. PLI, Production Linked Incentive Scheme. That means compared to the base year, that is 2019 to 20, compared to the base year, if the company manufactures more and sales more, it is based on the sales. If it sells more as compared to the base year, it will be given certain percentage as rebate. That is known as incentive. PLI was already there for mobile manufacturing, specific electronic components and drug intermediaries for active pharmaceutical ingredients. Now it has been extended to 10 more areas, including specialty steel, white goods, high efficiency PV modules, food products, textiles, telecom products, pharma products, automobiles, electronic and technology goods, and chemical cells, battery cells. These 10 are added to these 3. So overall there are 13 production linked incentive scheme sectors. 13 sectors are identified under PLI scheme. And the rebates would be provided in all these sectors. Respective ministry would provide the rebates. It's not single ministry. Respective ministry, let's say textiles ministry works like that. Respective ministries, they provide the incentives. Next issue is twin balance sheet problem. Due to COVID-19, we know that many companies got impacted, big, small, every company. Now, already there's a problem in Indian economy, that is twin balance sheet problem. That means on the one hand, high NPAs with the banks. On the other hand, due to economic slowdown, countries are underperforming. Their profits have gone down. That means both of them have balance sheet problems. Now this has increased, this risk of twin balance sheet problem, it has increased further during the COVID period. Now there is a challenge known as 4 balance sheet problem, that is infrastructural companies, banks, NBFCs, real estate companies. All these 4, they have this balance sheet problem, which is known as 4 balance sheet challenge. Earlier, companies majorly these high less profitable companies which were facing the balance sheet problem were infrastructural companies. Now, along with infrastructural companies, real estate companies, NBFCs, they're also facing the stress which is showing direct and indirect impact on the Indian economy. That is why this is known as 4 balance sheet challenge. Next issue is Vivad Se Vishwas scheme. Vivad Se Vishwas scheme is implemented by the Government of India under Ministry of Finance. It is to put an end to the pending tax disputes. Under this, one time a chance would be given to pay the tax, and after certain period they can pay it with certain amount of fine, and there won't be any cases registered against them. So that is how cases can be removed, more tax collections can be done. That's why government has introduced Vivad Se Vishwas scheme. Government has provided one-time relief for the taxpayers in this context. Vishwas scheme, under this scheme, this was extended till December 2020. That's why in November 2020 this was in news. Next issue is P.K. Mohanty Committee. RBI has appointed internal working group headed by P.K. Mohanty. This committee has given recommendations with regard to banking system. They include 1. Large industrial houses and corporates shall be allowed as a promoters of the bank. But if they have to be allowed, Banking Regulation Act needs to be amended. Well established non banking financial companies can be converted into banks if they have assets more than 50,000 crores. And this committee has also recommended for 3-year operational time for the payment banks to turn into small finance banks. Earlier, the time was 5 years. Now, non operative financial holding companies shall be continued as a preferential structure for new licenses to give the new licenses. These are some of the important recommendations by PK Mohanty Committee. Next issue is K curve and P by BV ratios for the financial companies. P by BV means price to book value of a company. That means market price for a share and book value of the share. These two are compared. If market price is more, it means that market has more confidence on that particular company. If the market value is less compared to book value, it means market doesn't have any confidence on that particular company. If it is neutral, that is, if it is 1, P by BV ratio, if it is 1, that means market doesn't have either neither positive nor good sentiments. In this context, P by BV ratio, it reflects adequacy of current capital, runway available to the entity for the growth. Based on this, the investor confidence depends upon. Now, many of the financial companies, they are facing this issue known as K-curve growth. K-curve means once the growth is fallen, few are growing up, few are going down. That means there's inequality that exists. As the arms of the K curve widen, inequalities widen. As the arms of the K curve narrows, inequalities also gets narrowed down. Inequality in the recovery process is shown through K curve. Next issue is NIIF. Union Cabinet has given approval for infusing 6,000 crores into NIIF. What is this NIIF? It is a government-backed entity in which government has 49% of share and foreign and domestic investors, they have remaining 51% of share. This NIIF, this is registered as Alternative Investment Fund with SEBI. This fund invests in various infrastructural projects. Now, government has proposed for National Infrastructure Pipeline, which requires 111, that is 111 lakh crore rupees in the next 5 years to develop the infrastructure. In that context, if the government infuses funds into it, private sector also will get the confidence. They also infuse funds into it. This can be used for building the infrastructure. Debt financing for the infrastructure development can be done through this NIIF. There are many measures taken by the government under Atmanirbhar Abhiyan. This is one such measure. Next issue is merger of LBV and DBS banks. RBI has proposed for merger of Lakshmi Vilas Bank and foreign bank known as DBS Bank India. So it has written off the LBF's paid up equity capital and the reserves. That means who have invested in the shares of LBV, their shares are gone now. It has written off. That means LBV need not pay them. This situation is similar to S Bank's AT1 bonds. AT1 means additional tier 1 bonds. That means when the investors invest in these bonds, the bank can pay it or bank can write it off. See, let's say additional tier 1 bonds, AT1 bonds are perpetual bonds on which only interest is paid and they can get the money only during the long term. Investors can get the money only during the long term. AT1 bonds are regulated by RBI. RBI, to bail out the bank, can write off the outstanding AT1 bonds without consulting the investors. The similar thing has happened with regard to LBV. Why this particular bank was merged with this? Why can't RBI try to bail this out? Because there's lack of trust. Many financial firms, PMC, cooperative banks, Yes Bank, there are many financial institutions that are collapsing. NPAs are rising, failure of the bank's management to introduce the reforms. These are all the issues which RBI considered and approved for merger of LBV and DBS Bank. This is managed under Banking Regulation Act 1949. Next issue is technical recession. Technical recession means recession is a macroeconomic term in which, let's say, in an economy, growth GDP growth rate rises up, which is known as expansionary phase of the economy, and GDP growth slows down, and when it enters into negative zone and when it continues in the negative zone for two consecutive quarters, that condition is known as recessionary phase. And again, a recovery phase, it recovers, and that's how up and downs will be there. Upswings and downswings will be there in the economy, which is part of business cycle. Upswing is known as expansionary phase, downswing is known as recessionary phase. Now, prolonged recession is known as depression. India has faced a technical recession, that means two consecutive quarters we have faced the recession, that is known as technical recession, and it is part of a business cycle. Next issue is fiscal deficit. There is a rise in the amount of fiscal deficit and percentage of fiscal deficit related to compared to GDP. We have FRBM rules, fiscal responsibility and budgetary management rules. According to FRBM rules, fiscal deficit needs to be limited. But as of now, because of the recession and depression in the economy, government has to spend under its fiscal stimulus package. Otherwise, demand falls down, growth falls down, employment falls down. That's why for fiscal stimulus it has to spend. But expenditure is there, but revenues, because of lockdowns, etc., revenues have come down. Revenue is less, expenses are more. That has led to deficits. Such one of the important forms of deficit is known as fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is total expenditure of the government minus total revenue plus borrowings. Plus borrowings. This is known as fiscal deficit. How fiscal deficit can be dealt? By reducing the public expenditure, by reducing the bonus, leaves and subsidies, by increasing the tax, but through the disinvestment process or through borrowing the money. So in all these processes, fiscal deficit can be reduced. Fiscal deficit can be filled and reduced. It can also be reduced by printing money, but printing money can lead to inflation, right? That is why generally we don't go for this particular process. This is important. Fiscal deficit and how it can be addressed is an important question. Next, let us understand IR related issues, international relations related issues. First one is RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. RCEP is a regional free trade grouping. Generally, economic integration is done in different phases. Initially, preferential trade agreement, then free trade agreement. More comprehensive one is comprehensive economic partnership. After that, customs union, common market and economic market, where all the countries follow same economic policies such as European Union. Right? Now, RCEP is this one, Comprehensive Economic Partnership. This is signed between 15 countries, 10 member countries of ASEAN and 5 other countries, South Korea, China, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. Earlier, India was also part of the negotiations, but we have moved out of the negotiations because of various reasons. Let us understand why India did not join this particular world's biggest trade deal. First, let us understand few points regarding this. Member countries of RCEP include ASEAN countries, 10 countries, ASEAN, Association for Southeast Asian Countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Brunei, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, Cambodia. These are 10 member countries. And then along with that, China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, 5 countries. These 15 countries together account for 30% of global GDP. This RCEP deal, this deals with trade in goods, trade in services, intellectual property rights, e-commerce, telecom communications, small and medium enterprises, agri products, etc. 3 largest economies such as China, Japan, South Korea came together in an economic agreement for the first time through RCEP. India has moved out of RCEP negotiations in the year 2019. Why? Because 1. we have unfavorable trade balance with China. It might impact the Indian trade further. This RCEP, see why it impacts, because under RCEP we are going to reduce the tariffs when we trade with the member countries. That might impact India's trade. Second one, service sector is there, but it is kept out of the primary negotiations as of now. Auto trigger mechanism is not accepted by India. Auto trigger mechanism, that means when the rules are negated, automatically normal tariffs would be allowed. That is known as auto trigger mechanism. So that is not accepted by India. Domestic goods will be replaced with the dumped goods from China. In case of agri products, New Zealand and Australia are there. So they are also major countries in dairy products. That will impact India. Lack of consensus on rules of origin, that is an issue. Under IPR, data exclusivity as a provision is asked by the group. That is also one of the reasons. Because of these, India said we best keep out of this particular group. Now, what are the implications of this? So it will check the dumping of goods from China, protects the domestic industry, reduces influence of China in the India's neighboring area. But what are the negatives? It reduces India's linkages to global supply chain. There are many major countries. So it reduces India's linkages to manufacturing supply chain. It might impact India's Act East policy, and it sets negative precedents for India's globalization goals. And if India rejoins in any case, then we have to move according to the rules that are already framed by these 15 countries. So these are some of the implications of India keeping out of this RCEP. Next issue is Armenia-Azerbaijan deal. Armenia-Azerbaijan are the West Asian countries. So the conflict zone between Armenia and Azerbaijan is known as Nagorno-Karabakh region. Nagorno-Karabakh region. This is the conflict region because of which Armenia and Azerbaijan went to war. This Nagorno-Karabakh region, it's an enclave located within Azerbaijan, but it has Armenians in it. So they want either independence or they want to merge with the Armenia. So there are frequent clashes that has led to war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. After the war, Russia has came in between. Russia has brokered a peace deal in this particular zone, Nagorno-Karabakh zone. Russian peacekeepers are deployed in this Nagorno-Karabakh zone. Next issue is SCO meeting 2020. Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting 2020. SCO was founded in the year 2001. It aims to resolve the border disputes. It is to fight the terrorism. It promotes regional security. It is to counter American influence in the Central Asia. SCO member countries include China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, India and Pakistan, 8 member countries. This is important for the member countries. One, as a counterbalance to NATO, Russia is there, understand. And it enhances the security cooperation among the members. It helps to deal with the terrorism, especially IS forces. It increases the economic cooperation in the region. One Belt, One Road. China can promote its One Belt, One Road region. India can push forward its Chabahar port to Iran to Central Asia. And an international north-south corridor between India and Russia, covering Central Asian countries. These are all can be done with the better cooperation among the SCO members. But then China's One Belt, One Road project is opposed by India. Traditionally, hostility is there between India and Pakistan. Russia issue with Ukraine. These are some of the issues. Recently, SCO meeting is focusing on COVID-related issues and Afghanistan peace stability. Afghanistan is an observer country in SCO. Iran is also an observer country in SCO. So SCO meeting 2020 is focusing on Afghanistan crisis this year, 2021. Next issue is Putrajaya Vision 2040. This is the vision plan adopted by 21 member country APEC Forum, Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum, Asian countries which are bordering the Pacific zone, and then these countries, Pacific Ocean countries on this side. From Central America only we have 2 countries. These are part of APEC, 21 member countries. They have discussed this particular Putrajaya Vision 2040. Under this particular thing, dealing with it, this particular vision has recognized the importance of free, open, fair, and non discriminatory transparent trade and investment among the countries. It discussed on free trade agreement in the Asia Pacific region. It discussed on internet and digital economy roadmap. Putrajaya vision is related to whom? Which countries are part of APEC? Likewise, questions can be asked. Next issue is UN Resolution 1540. Every year, this particular UN resolution on this discussions will be held. What is this? This particular resolution is adopted by United Nations Security Council in the year 2004 regarding the non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. It obliges all the member countries should oblige and refrain from supporting non-state actors from developing and acquiring weapons of mass destruction such as nuclear weapons, biological weapons, and chemical weapons. Under this particular one, there are various treaties which needs to be respected. One is NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty, Biological Weapons Convention, Chemical Weapons Convention. India is part of Biological and Chemical Weapon Convention, but India has not signed NPT, saying that it is discriminatory. But India has enacted to prohibit unlawful activities related to weapons of mass destruction. The law's name is Weapons of Mass Destruction and Their Delivery Systems Act 2005. UN resolution was adopted. Next year, we have framed this particular law. UN resolution 1540 deals with weapons of mass destruction. Next, let us understand governance related current affairs. Our first issue is fortified rice. Government is planning to introduce fortified rice through ICDS scheme. What do we mean by fortified rice? Undernutrition levels and anemia levels are high. So, to enhance the nutritional levels among the children, especially government school children, government is planning to introduce fortified rice distribution through ICDS. Fortified rice means first rice is taken and broken into powder and mix it with the nutrients and shape it like a rice kernel, and these will be added to the normal rice kernels. This will be supplied to the schools and ICDS centers. This particular fortified rice helps in addressing anemia and helps to overcome the problems of undernutrition. Next issue is malnutrition and related programs. Under Global Hunger Index, India is in the severe hunger category. In this context, what are the measures taken by the government to promote nutritional levels in India, or what are the measures taken by the government to address malnutrition problem? First one is Poshan Abhiyan. This is also known as National Nutritional Mission. This Abhiyan is to encourage and ensure malnutrition-free India by 2022. Anemia Mukt Bharat Abhiyan, Midday Meal Scheme, National Food Security Act, Pradhana Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, under which 6,000 rupees is given to pregnant and lactating women, ICDS scheme. These are some of the measures taken by the government to promote nutrition in India. Let us understand a bit more on Poshan Abhiyan. Poshan Abhiyan was launched in the year 2018. Its targets include reducing the stunting, undernutrition, anemia, and reduce the low birth weight by 2 to 2 percentages annually, respectively. Major goal of Poshan Abhiyan is to build malnutrition-free world by 2022. This program is implemented by Ministry of Women and Child Welfare. These are some of the measures taken under Poshan Abhiyan. First one is Anemia Mukt Bharat. Second one is home-based care of newborn and young children. Intensified diarrhea control program campaign. Universal immunization campaign. National Deworming Day. Mother's Absolute Affection, that is MA program. Nutrition rehabilitation centers. Early childhood development and food fortification. Some of these measures were already there. Poshan Abhiyan is just an umbrella program which integrates existing nutrition related schemes. Next one is amendments to FCRA regulations. FCRA means Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. Recently, in November 2020, Ministry of Home Affairs has notified new rules under FCRA. FCRA Act was enacted in the year 1976 to check the flow of foreign currency in social, political, and economic religious decisions of India. In 1984, all the non-profit organizations were mandatory to register to receive the foreign donations. In 2010, this 1976 Act was amended. Under this particular amended Act, FCRA registration validity was changed from lifetime to 5 years, and 50% of contributions could be received could be used for administrative purposes. Likewise, few additions were added. In 2020s, that is in the latest amendment, these are the changes that are made. First one is public sector employees cannot receive the foreign contributions. If a fund transfer received under FCRA to other individuals cannot be done. Quantum of administrative expenses was decreased from 50 to 20%. Providing Aadhaar number is made mandatory. Powers to suspend FCRA registration lies with the government. Renewal of registration should be done after every 5 years. Designated FCRA account should be open to receive the foreign currency, to receive the foreign contribution. Voluntarily surrendering the FCRA certificate option is also available for the NGOs. These are some of the changes or modifications that are introduced in the 2020s amendment. Next issue is National Population Policy, NPR. What do we mean by NPR? NPR is simply big data. That is, it's a database of residents. NPR doesn't provide any claim to citizenship. Under this particular NPR, demographic data, biometric data will be collected by the government. In this context, will this infringe upon the privacy of the individuals, which is part of fundamental rights? Privacy is not an absolute right. There are certain restrictions on it. In this context, NPR is available for government's use. That is why this is allowed without infringement to privacy right. And is NPR linked to NRC? As of now, our government says no. NRC is only citizens database. NPR is residents database. So NPR is the first step. Some say that it is the first step towards all India NRC. Then, how NPR is different from census? Census is primary source of socio-economic data, which is shared as aggregates. But NPR data is stored on individual basis. This can be used for identifying beneficiaries for social welfare programs such as Ujjwala, etc. And is there any relationship between NPR and CAA? No. CAA means Citizenship Amendment Act. There is no direct relationship. Total allocated cost is 12,000 crores, and this is slated to conduct along with the census by Feb 2021. But because of COVID-19, this deadline was further extended. NPR data collection is done by Ministry of Home Affairs. Census is also under Ministry of Home Affairs. Next issue is land laws of Jammu and Kashmir. Last year in 2020, government has issued land laws order. What are the important points in this? Before abrogating Article 370 and 35A, non-residents cannot buy immovable property in Jammu and Kashmir. That provision is now changed. Under the recent Reorganization Act, it's not the permanent residents alone, even non-residents can buy the land. But on the urban land and non-agricultural land, anyone can buy. On agricultural land, there are certain restrictions. Implementation of Real Estate Regulation and Development Act was not there earlier because of the separate laws to Jammu and Kashmir. Now, after bifurcation, after the abrogation of 370, implementation of RERA, Real Estate Regulatory Development Act, is done. And Kashmir Industrial Development Corporation, this takes up the land and uses it for the industrial development. And certain land parcels can be declared as strategic areas by the army officials. And usage of agricultural land. Any agriculturalist can buy the agricultural land in the Jammu and Kashmir, but non-agriculturists cannot buy the agricultural land in the Jammu and Kashmir. These are some of the land-related laws in Jammu and Kashmir. Gupkar Alliance, it says that these land laws are a violation of rights of people of Jammu and Kashmir. Next issue is Sashi Vempati Committee. This committee was appointed by Ministry of Information and Broadcast Technology. This is a 4-member committee to give the guidelines, to review the guidelines on television rating agencies, TRPs. What is TRP? See, recently in Mumbai, there's a case investigation that started for alleged tampering of the TRP ratings. What do we mean by TRP? Target point rating or television point rating. So this is the metric used by the marketing and advertising companies based on the viewerships. It is calculated by Broadcast Audience Research Council by installing barometers in 45,000 households as of now. Based on their viewership, rating is given to various channels and programs. This can be manipulated if we know who are these 44,000 households are. No? So that's why this was controversial last year. To review the guidelines with regard to TRPs, Shashi Vempati committee was appointed by the government. Next issue is Nurturing Neighborhoods Challenge. This is a 3-year challenge adopted by Ministry of Urban and Housing Development. In all the smart cities, urban areas and neighborhoods should be made child-friendly. Quality of young children should be increased. So, child-oriented amenities, early childhood facilities should be provided. This is the challenge accepted by Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. This name of this is Nurturing Neighborhood Challenge. Next issue is Global Center for Traditional Medicine. WHO has announced that it is setting up Global Center for Traditional Medicine to strengthen evidence-based research in the traditional medicine areas. This new center will support WHO's effort to supplement WHO's Traditional Medicine Strategy 2024 and 2023. This will be set up in India. This can be considered as one of the important steps forward to improvise upon the traditional medicine in India and elsewhere. Ministry of Ayush, it will coordinate with this particular center. Next issue is Strategic Policy and Facilitation Bureau. This is the collaborative effort between Union Ministry of Ayush and Invest India. These two collaboratively have set up Strategic Policy and Facilitation Bureau. This facilitates the systematic growth of Ayush sector in India. This bureau supports the Ministry of Ayush in strategic policy making initiatives, and it tries to reach the maximum potential of the Ayush sector, and it encourages the investment in this particular area. What is Invest India? Invest India is India's National Investment Promotion and Facilitation Agency. This was set up in the year 2009 as a non-profit venture under Ministry of Commerce and Industry. It focuses on sector-specific investor targeting programs. Under that, it is supporting Ministry of Ayush to gain the investments and promote to its fullest potential. These are the important current issues of November month. Thank you very much. All the very best.